So overall, the flight experience wasn't bad at all. It was pretty short and pretty smooth. When we did arrive in the New Orleans airport, I was expecting a pretty small little quaint place based on what I saw on YouTube, or not saw, heard about on YouTube. I was expecting like 2 gates or something, one to like Kentucky and then one to freaking, I don't know, Wisconsin. But like, yeah, it was a smaller airport than DFW, but even more importantly, it was a pretty nice airport. Like, it looked very modern and very sleekly designed. I was picturing rinky dink, but like in a cute way. But what I saw was, I would say like 9 out of 10 bougie. I'll give it 8 out of 10 bougie, so I'm not seeming too generous. But we get in the car and we start finally seeing more of New Orleans. And then we got to the Airbnb. And I gotta hand it to architects there at Saenger. They did a really good job of getting you value for your money. We couldn't go with like any 5-star hotels or anything crazy expensive, especially since we were staying there for 5 days. We were able to get this place for pretty cheap compared to other places in the city. And God, here's the Airbnb tour. It looks freaking amazing. A lot of amenities too, so definitely check that company out. So against my best wishes, we actually didn't really have anything planned for the first day. Our plan was walk around. One of the places we decided to like take a little trip to, proper trip to, was Tulane. You'll see how that campus looks like. So pretty, so pretty. At Tulane now, and this campus is so pretty. Look at that building. And there's like a park over there that looks amazing. Look at the architecture on that. We came across, drumroll please, frat houses. Why are these houses so narrow? Well, you could like fit a bed in there and then like one person. What the heck is that? After getting some food, we basically explored the Uptown/Carrollton area. That was really my first taste of what the stereotypical thought I had in mind for New Orleans was.
What do you think lives here?
The governor himself. It was a new day. The birds were chirping, the sun was shining, and I had a sore throat. I was a bit concerned, but I wasn't gonna let that ruin my day, because we had to start it by walking down the infamous Magazine Street with a bunch of historical architecture characteristic of New Orleans. And walk down that a few minutes and you've got yourself the World War II Museum. And let me just say, that museum was so freaking interesting, especially the Pacific exhibit. You're not really getting too much of Holocaust history. You get a few like audio excerpts, but it's mostly strategic like war planning and all of that stuff and propaganda. So you're really getting to like the nitty gritty. So this was definitely a stop on your list. If you're interested in that stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you could see there. You could basically spend all day just walking around that museum. Okay, that's actually pretty funny.
My men,
So
these mothers, wives, and sweethearts came to stand shoulder to shoulder with them in almost every...
Gotta say the wall's like a little bit outdated, not gonna lie. But here's my home. I spent $100,000 on this, and I used all my war bonds to buy this, you know? Here's my radio, yeah. And that's my dad. So by the end of this whole museum tour, I was exhausted. Fortunately and unfortunately, my travel partner is a huge history buff. They definitely do take a long time when it comes to museums. So I was basically crawling out of those doors by the time we were done. Sore throat was not getting any better. So definitely want to see if going outside and having maybe more humid air would help. You know, nature's humidifier. It did a little bit. But yeah, so the next plan after that was going over to Jackson Square, which is kind of a walk from the World War II Museum. It's a little bit hot, but we're walking over to Jackson Square. It's very pretty. It's like a whole little lawn of grass. And over there, we're planning to see the St. Louis Cathedral and then Café du Monde. There's some jazz music that we can hear coming over from near Bourbon Street and other streets close to that. So pretty cool vibes. We take a while, and unfortunately we haven't discovered the wondrous invention of water bottles. So we're kind of chugging and booming through this day without water, and we're exhausted. We kind of end off official plans for the day by heading over to the seafront, the Mississippi River, which is so cool. I haven't like been next to a river like that. I haven't done a lot of things, okay? Now this was kind of insane, but on our way to Tulane yesterday, the day before, we saw that Joe Gatto was performing that day, and we didn't really think much of it. We were just like, oh, that's kind of cool. But that day, we kind of ran out of things to do. So we were like, hey, why don't we just like go see Joe Gatto? There's still tickets, and these tickets are pretty cheap. So we buy the tickets, and we see Joe Gatto that night. We're on this side. Show started at 8 something, or started at 7 something, and it ended like near to 9, and we weren't really tired yet. We were like, hey, there's still a lot of life left in the city, let's make the most of things. So we actually walk over to Bourbon Street, because obviously that's like trademark, you know, what to do when you're visiting New Orleans. Kind of problem is I don't really drink, so looking for things to do on Bourbon Street was gonna be kind of a challenge, but definitely a welcome challenge. And we did find some pretty cool stuff. Approaching Bourbon Street. So lively. And then I discovered my favorite bar I've ever been in my life. It's called Famous Store. It's a bar in New Orleans geared mostly towards singing and getting you on the dance floor. I'm not a dancer, and I'm not a singer, especially when it comes to like public settings. But my God, I was like getting loose. So we went out of this godsend of a bar, and we were gonna take a little break from it. We heard this on the way. And then here's back to highlights of this legendary bar. We start off day 3 by walking to the Superdome. Unfortunately, it was undergoing renovation, so we couldn't go inside, but we did check out the store. And yeah, the store is pretty cool. Go Saints. I know nothing about how good you guys are, but you know, just felt like, you know, sending you luck. Hopefully I don't get hate for that, but you know, I feel like positive energy is always good. I don't know. Anyway, we were going on the trolley to head over to the French Market, which is another really well-known New Orleans highlight. Really interesting stores. You get a lot of jewelry and stones, and no, not even that, a lot of antique stores. It's very interesting. Yeah, I would definitely say go check that place out. There's a lot to see there, for sure. See, now this is traditional New Orleans architecture. You know, my mom would tell me stories of, you know, how they built these buildings from the ground up using only their hands. Isn't it crazy? See, back in Texas, we don't have that kind of work ethic. And this is something I admire about Louisianians. You know, they got something different in their soul. They're kind of special. Okay, so by this time we had discovered the wondrous invention of water bottles, but unfortunately we were running low at this point of the day. So we were dying again in the sun. We go over to New Orleans City Park and it is absolutely beautiful.
It's like a pretty small place, and then it started to get popular, and they have like a whole bunch of additions, and so it's kind of like patchwork restaurant together.
Man, that's amazing. I'm glad y'all interested in jazz. I'm glad, and I'm also happy that you didn't go to eat at a barbecue spot in the French bars.
Duck right there. Security intel just told me that this is a Boyd, because Boyd, I'd love to be a Boyd. Here's a museum of art and sculpture garden. Hey, yo, my guys got cake. Oh yeah, and on our way back from the sculpture garden back to our Airbnb, we saw this weed food truck. Okay, now here's where we're breaking into action sequence, okay? It is crunch time. We're back at the Airbnb and we're relaxing for a bit too long until we realize we're kind of running late for a ghost tour in a few minutes. So we're literally sprinting across the city. We're getting pedestrians looking at us saying, look at all those people running. What are they running for? We're literally sprinting. It feels so good. I don't really do cardio. I don't really exercise that much, but it feels nice running at that speed. My travel partner was not keeping up with me, not to brag or anything, but you know, she got those legs. But anyway, yeah, we ended up making it to the ghost tour, and on our way there, we actually see some people at our apartment complex that we said hi to earlier in the day. So yeah, it's all pretty nice. They're there for a voodoo tour, we're there for a ghost tour, and you know, vibes, we're on time and there's nothing to worry about, and we're high on adrenaline. Okay, so that ghost tour was really cool. I think probably like 90% of the stuff he was saying was BS though, but he still made it fun. That was the main thing. But yeah, so after the ghost tour, we're kind of wondering what to do because we're like a little bit a ways from our Airbnb. And according to our Uber driver earlier in the day that took us to New Orleans City Park, he says, forget about Bourbon Street, okay? That stuff is trash. Even Preservation Hall of Jazz, like that's like mid. Go to Frenchmen Street. That's where you see the best jazz in New Orleans. Here's what we see. On Frenchmen Street. This is where the real jazz is, according to our Uber driver.
Cells to child stem cells
So that lady that you saw in the clip, the one with blonde hair and bangs, I thought she was here for like a bachelorette party trip, but she ends up getting on stage and I'm so confused. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe she's like about to, I don't know, like do a backflip off the stage, because that's what I was expecting from her. But no, she has like an angelic singing voice and she starts performing Valerie from Amy Winehouse. A little bit of an afterthought, as you can see, but here's a long-awaited food montage. starts with, you know, a little bit of a relaxing activity. It's a cemetery tour. No, I'm just kidding. Cemetery tours are not cute. Pretty morbid activity idea, I personally thought. But New Orleans actually has some pretty interesting cemeteries. Instead of, you know, underground graves, they have these things called mausoleums, and they're above ground. I don't know how I didn't realize that before then, but we learned a lot of history from a tour guide. In New Orleans, it's typical to have your grave in a cemetery for 1 year and 1 day, according to the Catholic tradition. But no, he taught us a lot about a lot of different stuff.
Here, whose tomb is this?
Nicolas Cage.
Nicolas Cage's tomb, that's right. So Homer Plessy's in there. Let's set the stage. April 28, 1862, the American Civil War is occurring. Admiral Farragut breaks through the blockade at the mouth of the river, comes up the river, captures New Orleans. New Orleans becomes an occupied city for the rest of the American Civil War and Reconstruction. At the end of Reconstruction in 1877, as the troops are leaving occupied territories, there's a new law that's passed. And these laws are called the Jim Crow laws. We're all familiar with those. An awful set of laws designed to disenfranchise those of African descent. Fast forward to 1892. Homer Plessy gets on a train at Crest Street and Roll Street, right outside the French Quarter. Sits in the whites only car. Agent comes up, asks him if he's a man of color. He acknowledges that he is, refuses to move, and is promptly arrested. He is an early Rosa Parks.
We're kind of near Armstrong Park. The cemetery, St. Louis Cemetery, isn't that far from Armstrong, so might as well take a look at that and see what there is to see there. I didn't think there was any really crazy history attached to it. I thought it was just a pretty park, but my God, we got a little taste of this on our ghost tour as well. But we ran into this guy who took a photo of us by a statue of like the jazz players by the entrance, and he took our photo, and we were like, oh yeah, thanks. He ends up giving us this hour-long history tour on Armstrong Park, and it is the most interesting history lesson I have learned that whole entire trip. He taught us about how Armstrong Park was kind of a refuge for slaves back in the day. On Sundays, you had your day of rest. A lot of slaves end up going to this park, play music, and enjoy themselves. Essentially, he taught us a bunch of stuff about this historical park. Another part of this history lesson included this really cool place in New Orleans. It used to be a recording studio for people like Louis Armstrong and other great jazz artists. And nowadays it's been converted to somewhat of a laundromat. So it's half recording studio, half laundromat. It's a really cool place. Along with that, on our cemetery tour, we learned about the oldest church in New Orleans, and we went inside there. We've also been wanting to go to this other church called the Immaculate Conception Jesuit Church, and it's a really historical church. It's been there for a long time. Oh my gosh, the interior is absolutely beautiful, unlike anything I've seen before, and definitely not what I was expecting in such a dense city like this. It was so intricate and so intentionally designed that I was quite clearly in shock. Another free random history lesson and lunch later, we're over in New Orleans, rushing over to Preservation Hall, which is the oldest hall for jazz. Hi guys, how y'all doing today? After experiencing that amazing show, we go on ahead and take a ferry to Alders Point, which was another recommendation that we got from that guy over in Armstrong Park. And it was quite a serene ride. It kind of reminded me of another state like Maine or something. The buildings were definitely old school, and it was definitely more of a coastal feeling. It's really nice just walking around there and taking in the sunset, because that's around the time we were at that point. We saw this casino and I got ID'd on the spot. It's the skincare routine, I tell you, it really does work. But anyway, we just walked around after that. But yeah, pretty chill night after that. Day 5 rises, and it's a little bit bittersweet because it's our last full day in this little paradise that we call New Orleans. And we start off with a bayou tour. It's pretty smooth, just the right thing to start off our day. Weirdly enough, I was thinking that the alligators were gonna be like jumping on board to like eat us all. I didn't know that crocodiles were the ones that were violent, but either way, it was very serene. We saw the trees. We had quite a few people on board, but we were near the front. I'm pretty sure we got like pretty good views of like everything we had to see. After that, we were kind of just sitting around thinking of the next thing to do. After a few minutes of thinking, we ended up making an unplanned trip to the Audubon Zoo. That was actually a pretty cool zoo. It would have been so much better if it wasn't so hot and we had brought more of wondrous inventions of water bottles. We definitely were that travel pair with the sun umbrellas for most of the trip. Definitely did stay out most of the time on this day because it was freaking hot. We were gonna clown on the zoo because as we were walking in, it seemed like most of the exhibits were like closed or down for repairs or in construction. But as we spent more time in it, there were quite a few exhibits. This is either the second or third zoo I've ever been to in my entire life. So, you know, I don't really have high standards, but it is definitely a pretty cool zoo. Definitely check it out if you are in New Orleans. Tickets are a little bit pricey for my standards, but maybe that's just zoos in general. Maybe that's why I haven't been to them. So we make it back to Jackson Square, and it is a much more lively Jackson Square. We go back to Jackson Square in the first place to tour the 1850 house, which, oh my gosh, just walking around in that mansion, that was literally giving me anxiety. Like those crickety squares, like I thought I was gonna fall. I thought I was on like some kind of get over your fear type reality TV show, because I was very hesitant to walk up them stairs, and I'm not really afraid of heights. Armstrong Park guy also told us about this grocery store called Robert's, which is really hip with the locals. So of course, you know, we definitely have to take a trip down there. Side note, we do come across like this parade of people next to Robert's. I don't know what that's about, but it's kind of cool. We also see these jazz performances in this park. That's all a very nice experience, besides the sun performing MMA kicks on me, but either way, we move. And then on our way back, we wanted to see what the vampire boutique that we saw on the ghost tour was all about. I didn't want to leave New Orleans without checking out this favorite local bar and restaurant. Last day in New Orleans, and I'm really sad because this is such a fun trip. But I'll see you guys when I get home. Wish me a safe flight. Bye. The fake cafe Giovanni. Should I get this? Ooh, I hear a bunch of yeses. These are the coolest bathrooms ever. And that's that. 5 days in New Orleans, 120 hours. There's your itinerary. I do have a list of what we did in the description. Also, do have a food montage. Make sure you're making memories. Make sure you're reinventing the ordinary. I'll catch you on the flip side.